All right, good evening. Ooh. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We're going to get the meeting started, but just so everyone knows, we're not actually projecting live like we normally do, so we're recording the audio. So if anyone was planning to watch at home that you know, they have to run down here if they want to watch the meeting. So. All right, so thanks for your patience. Calling the meeting to order, will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. All right, first item on the agenda tonight is the approval of the agenda. Do you have any requests for changes? Do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Second.
All right. I had a motion from Commissioner Grote and a second from Commissioner Duncan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next item is the approval of the minutes from the September 9th, 2024 meeting. Does anyone have any concerns about the minutes or want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, a motion from Commissioner Farr. Do I have a second?
Second.
Taylor? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are passed. Moving on tonight, we have one public hearing this evening, and that is for Marshall Gardens 2024-10. This is a request for comprehensive plan amendment from low-density residential to medium-density residential on 8.69 acres and from low-density residential to parks and open space on 12.95 acres. Planned unit development concept plan review on 32.11 acres. Planned unit development district review with waivers on 7.21 acres. Zoning change from rural to R1-9.5 on 7.21 acres. Rural to RM-2.5 on 8.69 acres, and rural to parks and open space on 12.95 acres. Preliminary plat of 32.11 acres and 16 lots, 4 outlots in the right-of-way. A site plan review on 32.11 acres. All right, will the proponent of the project please come forward, and I imagine you're going to explain that for us.
Thanks for going through that long-winded description. Hi, Commissioners and Chair. Cody Dietrich with Lake West Development. Tonight I'm joined by Kelsey Thompson and Kurt Fretham, who is the owner of Lake West Development. In front of you, we are proposing to share our project, The Bluffs at Marshall Gardens. That's what we've branded this to date. So we'll hop in and get going. Make sure this works. The Marshall Gardens property is located just west of Flying Cloud Airport. The Marshall Farms is what currently sits on the property. The Marshall family has owned the property for, I believe, 70 years this year, producing flowers and produce through that time. The property sits on the bluffs overlooking the Minnesota River and is the, excuse me, this photo is a past photo, an aerial of the site. On the north side, you'll see the farm, which is the open flat land. On the south side, you'll see the bluffs, which is the treed area right above Riley Creek. As part of the comprehensive plan, Aspire Eden Prairie 2040, the site is called out as a infill site, which calls for an increase in density, providing different housing types, and looking to add in single family or single level living opportunities in this area. Currently, the site is guided as low density residential, which allows 5 units in area max. We are looking to take part of the site on the south side and go to medium density residential, which would be 14 units in acre max, and then keep the north side as low density residential. On the gross 32 acres, we are still maintaining that low density residential as 3.6 units per acre. And the intent of this is to cluster the higher density towards the south portion of the site away from the neighboring single family homes and keep that same vibe towards the north portion of the site. I think the biggest point there too is trying to keep that separation throughout that so it doesn't feel like the medium density residential is intruding onto those single family homes. This slide talks about the development timeline a little bit. We started this project about a year ago with staff working through it, have been to a couple of city council workshops, had 2 neighborhood meetings, and have gotten to this point by submitting our applications back in August and working through. So we continue to look forward to going through this project and then likely to City Council in January and a second reading in March with hopes to start in summer of 2025 on construction. Here you'll see our proposed site plan of the overall development. As you can see on the northwest corner, Outlot A is called out to be a community garden. We are planning to make this lot available to the residents of the development, then to the overall City of Eden Prairie residents, and then if there's more availability than we have demand, we'll go outside of Eden Prairie, but we want to really focus on that being an Eden Prairie first focused community garden. Outlots B and C will be additional stormwater ponds on the northwest side. And then you'll see the 15 villa homes running along the north side of the Crestwood Terrace extension. These villa homes, I have some renderings towards the back of the presentation, will be 60-foot wide lots and provide single-level living opportunities with loft or basement options. Realistically, the main level living will have the primary bath and bedroom, the kitchen and living, and the washer and dryer. So you don't have to use any of those other spaces, but if you have guests or kids or any of those other things living with you, that's an opportunity to use those spaces as well. And then on the south side, you will see what we call as townhome flats. And by that, we're talking about the exterior look of the building has a townhome feel to it. So the building is all one building. You'll see those yellow areas in between each portion of the structures. That is above the underground parking garage, which connects along the whole building. And then there are 4 separate different buildings on top of that, which house about 23 to 27 units, depending on the building. So overall, that's 100 units there. And then those yellow areas are plazas connecting the front side of the building to the back side to the pool area, fire pits, and other amenities. Next to the Outlot C stormwater pond, also on the west side of the property, we have a community garden building that will be able for use for the community garden users, as well as a small dog run for the HOA itself. I'll go back to everything south of the actual new construction improvements will be preserved bluff area, and those plan to be dedicated and deeded over to the city. Overall, we're preserving nearly 60% of the site as open green space and preserved bluff area. One of the sections, kind of the pinch points we got to through our neighborhood meetings, is there were some concerns on this connection of Crestwood Terrace to La Forêt. So we wanted to provide a cross section of what we're doing here. On the top side, you'll see that section showing the house versus the neighboring house to the north of the property. There's about a 90-foot separation between the homes. There are some other homes in this community that have about 100-foot separation, so we're still kind of in line with that piece. To help with screening and buffering, because there is concerns of building those homes next to each other, we have 11 trees currently planned for villas lots 14 and 15, and are open to adding a fence or some other features to help with that buffering and screening for that neighbor. Here's a high-level sketch of the community garden. So as shown here, we have about 250 plots, and these range from 10 by 10s to 20 by 20s with a couple of small planter beds as well that are raised. So we're still finalizing how this will look in the end, but we were trying to focus this around a central feature, which you'll see the top right picture of some sort of pergola or structure to bring everybody to the center. The community garden is planned to be owned by the HOA again through a nonprofit, and then we'll set up a board to run that as well. So it'll have ties through the whole HOA. So we've further defined that as we've gone along. Then we'll hop into some renderings quick. So this is a rendering from the front of the building looking south at the main entry. We'll have a small section of the buildings for management office, community area with a club room, library, fitness center along that ways, and then you walk back to the pool. Here's another rendering, one of those plazas that connect between the two buildings. In the back, we have a rendering of the pool area from above as an aerial. Additionally, you'll see on top of the buildings, we're proposing solar panels so to cover a portion of the buildings. We're looking to really add sustainable features to this project with increased stormwater improvements, those solar panels, EV charging capable for at least one car per unit in the underground garage. The EV charging capability will run along the whole north side of the underground garage. Here's a couple more renderings. This is our marketing floor plan that we have been working on. So the primary unit type of all these townhome flat units will be a 2-bedroom plus den, and these will all be for sale units. We tried to create a unit that takes advantage of the bluffs and the views. So All the units are actually through units that see both to the front and the back of the site, and this allows for those views to be seen throughout. Additionally, we have a little bit of a different product type where we have 16 elevators across the property. So every building has 4 elevators, and that services about 6 units per elevator, trying to have a very private-esque feature, especially since COVID has happened and different things to keep that safe and secure. And additionally, here are some renderings of the villa lots, or villa homes, excuse me. This picture takes out a couple trees just for visual aesthetics so you can see the proposed homes. And then here's another one showing side-by-sides as they're flipped to create more space in between. These villa homes will have that primary level of living on the first floor. I believe it's around 1,800 square feet with a total of around 3,400 square feet. This is showing the first floor plan with the loft. Again, you have your primary bath, primary bedroom, living, kitchen, office space, washer and dryer and garage on the first floor. And then that loft carries 2 bedrooms and a bonus room, as well as a recreation room. And we're still kind of working on what the basement plan will look like, so hoping to have that soon. But ideally, the villas will primarily be that one building type with some different floor plans in between, inside, excuse me. And I think that wraps it up for a quick high-level pitch of the project. So happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Initial questions for the developer.
I'll start.
Commissioner Farr.
Sure. I see that the flats are all that one primary color. The villas on the other side of the street that you just showed a rendering of, will those all be the same color also, matching, or are there color choices to be made for the owner?
Yep, they will all be the same color too. We're trying to keep the aesthetics similar throughout the whole development.
Kind of
So,
monochromatic.
Yep, a really European modern type feel.
Yep, okay, great. The flats, obviously a parking below, so that'll be a concrete floor. Is this a totally wood frame structure above that, or are you gonna go with concrete floors?
A wood frame structure above the podium.
Okay,
Yes.
great. On your open space diagram that you had in the packet, there was a color-coded open space calculation. You have generous open space, thank you.
Yep.
But the backyard of the flats wasn't colored open space, only the pool area. There's a generous lawn area south in the backyard all the way along there. Are you trying to keep that private for some specific reason?
No, that's just a portion of the Eden Prairie City Code. So technically, we can't include grassy areas as part of open space. It's a kind of a nuanced portion of the code that doesn't allow us to highlight that in that section. So when I talk about 60% of the site being open space or preserved,
Yep.
I'm saying that includes all the grass areas. Our open space exhibit shrinks that down to basically improved areas that are for use.
Okay.
It's a code nuance that Jeremy can maybe answer further.
Yep, all right.
Yeah.
You answered my question, thank you.
Yep.
Just minor point about the long flats building. There's only 2 trash rooms in the basement, one at the west end, one at the east end. So if you kind of live in the middle of the building, you got to take the elevator down and then carry your trash for about a block through the garage to put it into a container.
Yeah, and that's just to keep those condensed. If we have too many of them, they get just too hard to control, and it gets a little bit more of an operational issue from doing that.
Okay, not our issue, frankly, but it just looked a little inconvenient for some of the residents. Okay, I'll wait for others. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, I just have one. Can you just clarify or point out the buffer area between this development and the property to the north? And the landscaping plan and what it looks like?
Yeah, so the building on the left would be our villa on the top portion of the plan, and the building on the right would be that home behind lots 14 and 15. Those trees that say vegetation buffer, we have 11 trees currently planned there. We could add a little bit more. We get a little bit concerned if there's too many for just spacing issues for root zones and things like that. But that vegetation buffer will help with that. And so it's 70 foot approximately between their property and the property line. Then we have another 20 foot setback on our side, so 90 feet in total.
And are there existing trees there that will remain, or will they be?
There are some existing trees that will stay there. There might be a couple that go away on our property. I'd have to double check on that piece.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Could you go to the, back to the outlet that shows the full design? I think it's that
Yep.
one there. If you've had a lot of discussions around the concerns about 13, 14, 15 abutting up closely. Did you discuss flipping those with the community garden? Is that just not feasible for what you plan for the community garden, or?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a trade-off. So I'll preface with the part that gets difficult is just where that road connects into La Forêt. Gets to be so skinny, it's hard to create a meaningful community garden there because it'd just be very long and short. And realistically, it would just be flipping the villa homes to be along those other homes on the west side. So it's kind of a product of the design of the road having to go through there. That's been long planned as part of the comprehensive plan, and so it's trying to work through that. We did originally in the plan have a club room and a pool and a pickleball court up on the right side of where the villas are on the other side of the road, on the east side, kind of where you see that drive into the underground garage. We took those out and shifted the buildings down a couple feet, trying to give it a little bit more separation and take care of some other concerns with noise around the pickleball court. So we took that out completely. And then the pool and everything, we moved to more centralized with the flats to keep, again, the amenity areas away from the neighbors just to reduce noise and things. So it does just get to be a hard product of that, and having the road have to come through here and connect also on the west side of Crestwood Terrace. Somebody's going to have a home next to them. The other part is, somebody could take this and look at a full subdivision. If that was the case, there'd likely be homes along the whole north side of the property. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Farr, did you have a comment? I'm sorry, did you have a question or comment?
Sure. I was going to tag on after Commissioner Duncan talked about the separation between the villa homes and that neighborhood. And that enlarged plan that you had up on the screen for her, I'm sorry, would you put that back?
The cross section? Yeah.
There we go,
Yeah.
right there. I couldn't help but noticing in the lower right-hand corner there that the width of those single-family homes, when you put two of those together, is about the width of some of those larger homes on, is it Geyser? I'm sorry. And so I'm wondering, did the thought ever occur to you guys to literally go from single-family to twin homes so that the width of the house, the structure, if you will, the width of the structure kind of matched the width of the structure on Geyser, and you would increase the gap between the twin homes so that there'd be more airspace there. Now, that probably kicks you out of single-family to a multifamily, which may trigger all sorts of comprehensive guide plan and zoning issues that may already be tumbling downhill. But I just wanted to ask the question because in terms of structure, size, and proportion, that maybe seems to fit better.
Yeah, I'll point to Kurt. I don't know if we did or not, but
Haven't registered really.
Kurt?
Hadn't registered that comment is what Kurt had said.
Sure, that's fine.
I'm not sure I'm the best one to answer it, but I'll take a shot at it.
Okay.
We went through a number of scenarios.
You probably want to introduce yourself to the chairman.
Sure. Kurt Fretham, Lake West Development, 14525 Highway 7, Minnetonka.
Thank you.
Thank you all for hearing our proposal tonight, and we're happy to be here. Happy to have gone through what we have and to be more specific to Commissioner Farr's question about twin homes or duplexes, and they probably would mimic the sizing. We felt like we were trying to kind of cater to what Cody talked about earlier in the comprehensive guide plan, single level living. Not that that couldn't be accomplished in twin homes, but the product type we were focused on was trying to create a community that was geared towards single family living, which drove the design, a lot of it. We did come up with some alternative designs of just straight single family housing, which, like Cody mentioned, it lined up homes all the way across the north property line. As we went through those iterations at the neighborhood meetings, this just kind of melded into what seemed the most popular. I'm not saying, if you said you want twin homes, I don't know, we might be willing to go back to the drawing board and figure that out. I'm not sure it gets us a better result. It takes away the space that's in between of the two homes, but the long story short is we really haven't. No, we're open to ideas, but we haven't done that.
Sure, okay. Thank you for that, appreciate it.
Other questions right now?
Yeah, Commissioner.
Yes.
So,
Commissioner Taylor.
in reference to the flats, there's two entrances into the garage. That's on the east and west side only,
Yes, one on each end, basically, and it goes all the way through.
all the way through. Okay.
So those two little curves around the end are the drives
Right.
into the garage.
And how many vehicles you anticipate you can store underneath ground?
So city code is 2 stalls per unit. We have 200 in the garage plus about 50 stalls at grade for guest parking and things like that.
Okay. And then the common pool area, will that also be able to be used by those in the villas, or to just be for those in the flats?
Yeah, we're planning to have them be all part of one HOA with some separate bylaws for some of the main maintenance differences between the condos and the villas. But they'll all be underneath one HOA with use of all the amenity spaces.
Thank you.
Jeremy, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, just wanted to comment on the question about the twin homes on the north side. The property was obviously guided for low-density residential, which is a single-family detached type of use. And it originally contained 60-ish or so, in terms of sketch plans, 60 single-family homes. That created, while it solved a density question and maybe a land use question, it created some potential issues with protection of the bluff and protection of the kind of that sloped area. Also, there would be virtually no buffer between single-family homes and then the existing homes along the north side. And so kind of in the initial kind of review and development of this project, we saw kind of the benefits of those type of mix of uses while still trying to keep the single-family to the north side. It's not exactly the same. They're smaller lots than the neighborhood to the north, but they try to be consistent with it from a land use perspective. So that's why that was not suggested as twin homes earlier, as we wanted to cluster, as Cody had mentioned, the density away from the existing single-family homes to try to preserve as much of that existing character as we could. So while we didn't necessarily speak to twin homes as an alternative at the beginning, we really focused on what you see here in terms of single-family to the north and then the attached family product to the south.
Just a clarifying question. So if I'm understanding right, was the intent from the beginning to have single-family homes throughout the entire development? And then we encourage them to shift to this development type?
Not necessarily encourage them, but the original comprehensive plan, or the comprehensive plan, guides us for low-density residential, 0.5 to 5 units an acre. And any potential development coming in with that range would, in theory, fit the comprehensive plan. That did introduce, knowing what we know now about the site in terms of the bluffs and the sensitive area, basically the southern half of the site, we recognize the benefit to the city in terms of deviating from that strict low-density residential and opening it up for potential other uses, which was the medium-density residential. So we didn't direct them to make that change, but we were open to what they had to say in terms of potential changes, and the council reviewed this in a workshop and felt that it's worthwhile exploring a little bit more, and so that's where we're at now.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kirk.
Just a comment from my perspective, and I've been around here for a long time, and the bluff has always been sacred, and protecting the bluff. And so I think whatever we're doing, and this plan seems to go to that level of making sure that we protect the bluff and keep that as a key feature in Eden Prairie, that we have the bluffs there. So I can see the logic behind what you're saying, Jeremy, on because just spreading out single-family homes throughout the entire area likely would have more, and it sounds like did have more potential issues relative to the bluff.
I have a question.
Mr. Sibley.
Just going to about the villas, I got a few questions around there, and forgive me if I missed it in the presentation, but what's the approximate square footage of the foundation and the potential total finished square footage?
It's about 17 or 1,800 square feet from a foundation standpoint, and then that plan with the loft is about 3475.
And what's your price point, roughly?
Yeah, so the villas will likely be starting out in the 1.2s and going up, whereas the townhome flat condos will be 900-ish thousand to 1.3 million, probably.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other comments, or maybe we'll go to the planner's report.
Yep, sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Jeremy?
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. Kind of spoke some of my piece already, but this project does require a number of approvals. Needs a comprehensive plan amendment, as I mentioned before. The property is guided low density residential, the entire 32 acres or so. What they're proposing is a comprehensive plan amendment that basically keeps the area north of Crestwood to be low density residential for the single family. The middle third or so for the flats is the medium density residential, which is allows attached family product. And then south of the buff line is parks and open space. And as Cody had mentioned, that will be provided to the city. It's consistent with what we've required of other projects or asked of other projects, so that we can maintain that kind of green corridor along Riley Creek from encroachment and for protection. And ultimately we envision where appropriate trails and other type of features from a public use perspective. In addition to the comprehensive plan amendment, the zone change will be required. The property is right now zoned rural, which is our holding zone for a property until it's rezoned or developed. And obviously being used as a farm is appropriate for that zoning. But what is proposed with this project is change the area north of Crestwood basically to R1 9.5 as mentioned. RM 2.5 for the medium density residential, which is what you normally see with our condo and our apartment buildings. That's the zoning district that you normally see. And then parks and open space, again, another layer of protection because the city will own it and it will be zoned for no development. So the neighbors can be confident that that property won't be redeveloped or developed in the future. Also part of the zone change kind of application, there's a PUD proposed. The PUD, a plan unit development, is allowed, or we provide that as an opportunity to allow for unique development that kind of fits with the specific site, not just a blanket kind of zoning district. And this is a prime example of what a PUD does. We're flexible. We have 2 or 3 different zoning districts as proposed on this property. We're asking for, or the developer's asking for waivers from the lot area and the lot width for the villa homes. And that is directly related to the goal of preserving the community garden area. If the villa homes were to meet the R1 9.5 zoning district, they would be larger. They'd be 2,000 to 3,000 square foot bigger, and then they would be another 10 to 15 feet wider. That virtually would take away Outlot A in terms of ability for a community garden. And that's been a kind of a driving goal of the sellers and the development team as we've kind of worked through, is to try to preserve some of that kind of character and that history of the property. So that's why there's waivers proposed from those 2 requirements. There's no waivers for density, no waivers for height, setback, or anything like that. It's just the size and the width for 13 of the 15 single-family homes. I mentioned earlier the PUD process in the sense that it provides some flexibility and allows us to kind of develop a project that fits the property more than just the straight zoning district. And this is a good example of being not necessarily flexible, but by being open to other opportunities from how you apply the zoning districts to this property. Introducing the medium density residential and the flats product allow us to achieve several of our goals that would not normally have been achieved if we just went straight flat R1 zoning. For example, all the flats there on your screen, you'll see the solar panels along the south side of that building. There will be, I think, I don't even want to quote the number, but quite a few kilowatt hours generated every day for the solar panels that will be installed at the time of construction. That is not a requirement. This is because there's no PUD for the multifamily product. They're meeting our sustainability goals with introducing solar panel on the roof of that building. In addition, as Cody had mentioned, half of the lot or half the parking spaces in the basement will be EV ready. The developers recognize the market is driving that as a requirement for people looking to purchase homes, and so that will be available for them in the basement area. A PD is required. A PD requested for the villa homes. There will be solar ready and solar or EV parking available for the villa home, so that will meet those requirements. But the flats exceed the minimum requirements in terms of that sustainability. Additionally, the flats allow trigger inclusionary housing or affordable housing ordinance, and we have kind of two models. They can provide, a developer can provide a certain percentage of the units to be affordable based on a certain AMI standard, or they can pay a fee that goes to the city, and that is used by the city council to initiate and complete inclusionary housing goals. So they are achieving affordable housing, just not on this property. That will go to fund our programs, land trusts, naturally occurring affordable housing initiatives, things like that to help keep affordable housing here in Eden Prairie. So they are meeting that goal, which if this was straight single family, we would not get that goal. I mentioned parking. Parking is met. All the standards for parking are met for both projects. Buyers of these type of products would normally see here in the Eden Prairie market. Those are the main points I want to mention. I know we've gotten some comments on traffic, and city engineer Schulze can speak to those, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. The staff is recommending approval of the requests that are shown or listed in your staff report, including the waivers, because we do feel that this is a good product, a good fit within the neighborhood, and it does help us achieve quite a few of our goals.
Thank you, Jeremy. Questions for Jeremy?
I do have one question.
Mr. Kirk.
One of the issues that had perplexed me a little bit, not in a negative way, was why the community garden? Did I hear you reference that back to the original, the owners of the farm? That was one of, is that where the kind of the initiative for a community garden came?
I'll let the applicant speak to that. That's my understanding.
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome. Could you just state your name for the record, please?
Yes. My name is Kelsey Thompson, Lake West Development, 14525, Highway 7 in Minnetonka. Thanks for having us here tonight. This is a really exciting project. We poured a lot of energy into this, and we're really excited to be here.
Could you just pull the mic down a little bit?
Cody's a little taller than me. All right. So the community gardens, really we came across, the site itself, it's been farmed for many years as gardens. As you know, it's an active farmstead, one of the last remaining here in Eden Prairie. And with that, we were researching some public benefit for the community And one of the things we came across was on the city website that there is a high demand in the area for community gardens. So we have a lot of active members in Eden Prairie community who are looking for these types of garden spaces, which felt very fitting for this area, being that it is a garden. And we thought we could preserve an actual piece of history of this land, which it's been used for so long, and kind of give an ode to the heritage, to the Marshall family. And that's really where the brand came from, was Marshall Gardens, and just a really special place and to not only kind of give an identity and brand to the area, but also to promote some social, spontaneous interactions. One of the things that has been seen more in these types of developments is people are wanting more of this spontaneous social interaction or social experiences where it's not necessarily you want these planned meetings to an appointment time to meet somewhere at a coffee shop. It's more of this spontaneous type where you can walk along the sidewalk, or maybe you're going to get your mail or walk your dog or go to your garden space. So we're really trying to incorporate that in the design and layout of this development. And the community garden space is really a wonderful space to connect with the earth, grow your own food or your flowers. It's an activity that a grandparent could connect with their grandchild or their own children. And we think it's really special to this development. And again, to honor the Marshall family.
Thank you.
Let me just ask a question about that. In the gardens, what would you guess, how many of those will be individual plots where somebody is doing vegetables or flowers or whatnot, versus what I think of as a communal garden where the garden club comes and develops a larger area?
That's a great question. It'll unfold. Right now, we put together a site plan, honestly, using, the city's design for a community garden on how many plots we think we can get and what the demand is just already in the community. Cody, was it 10 by 10s or 20 by 20s in the blue?
Blue is 20 by 20s, 10 by 10 yellow.
Okay, so 20. So on this, kind of, if you look at this in quadrants, the middle being the kind of more gazebo type kind of community gatherings, shelter space. And so the blues are all 20 by 20s, the yellows are 10 by 10s. Do you remember the exact number?
250.
So 250 garden plots. We envision that somebody might come along and want a bigger plot. They might take one or two or even four and make it a little bit bigger. There might be a communal kind of, community gardens, I hear what you're saying, that it could be a plot where multiple people are working on the same plot, or do people just have it individual? I think, if there was people who wanted to go in on one bigger one, I think that's something that could definitely work out. We've also wanted to make this available to all abilities. We have some raised garden planters as well, so you don't need to bend over, get down on your knees. And I think the demand for this will, start to kind of come out once we market the garden space and people start to reserve these spaces. Maybe more people want the raised garden beds. Maybe there are more of these bigger, larger community plots like you're speaking about, or some individual. So we're flexible with how that might play out.
You provide water to each one of those 250 plots?
Yeah, so we'll have water accessible with just a spigot. Yeah.
Thank you.
And in reference to the plots, will they be on a first-come basis, or you have to rent them out, or how does that play into?
Yep, it'll be on a first serve basis. We'll open it up to the members within Marshall Gardens first, the villa homes, the condo owners, and then to the neighboring community and community at large within Eden Prairie.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for walking us through that.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Do we have other questions from Jeremy, or we'd like to go to the traffic report first?
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question for Jeremy. Yep. I've heard the term buffer be referred to already this evening half a dozen times, And just for the record, I want to make sure our zoning ordinance is clear. When we're doing single-family next to single-family, there's no requirement for a buffer, right?
That is correct. There's there's just the setback. There's no buffering or screening requirement. It's just a setback.
Sure, sure.
Generally, though, what we see in situations like this, infill development in particular, the existing resident neighborhood would request some sort of mitigation to help,
Sure.
help from a visual standpoint.
Okay, so I see the applicant's making a gesture, certainly for buffering in distance and in trees and whatever, but I just wanted to, from a formal standpoint, there's no litmus test where we're looking at a waiver or performance standards for a buffer.
True.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Did you have anything else to add, Jeremy, at this point?
No, sir.
Okay. Do we want to walk through traffic report?
Sure, Chair and Commissioners. This development did require a traffic study. Obviously, we went through that process as we do with most developments. Probably more thorough than we wanted to. We wanted to really get all our bases covered. So the study looked at several of these intersections that surround this neighborhood, and they looked at both the build condition and obviously the trip generation. So there was some questions on traffic of how many trips was this going to generate. And some of it also compared to what would that look like we've talked about this 60-unit single family. Typically, a single family unit generates roughly 10 to 11 trips per day. A multifamily is in that 6 to 7 range, so it actually drops the trips when you start to talk about multifamily. This being, these villa levels, they're probably maybe for that a different family style or type that might be lower than that average. But in general, there weren't any, just overall in general from the traffic study, there weren't any operational issues expected. I think we anticipated traffic coming out of a site like this that gets developed. Obviously, one of our biggest concerns was the connection. We extended Crestwood Terrace, which connects on to Dell Road on that side and on the other side as well, just for access and some of our transportational goals just in the city itself. But overall, the study concluded that there weren't any operational issues with this as a result of the development and the increase in traffic. So if we want to go into specifics on the traffic generation, it's around 900 trips a day. That breaks down to, just looking at a couple here. So then they break it down further into like an AM peak hour and PM peak hour, which is pretty typical. So let's say in the AM peak hour, number of trips leaving this site are about 50. And then the PM peak hour number of trips coming back in are about the same, about 50 trips in that hour, which generates, like I said, about 900 trips in a day. So very, very typical, very average for a site of this large. Comparing that to just what would be single family, you're looking at about 700 trips a day. So not a lot. And then you break that down to the AM and PM peak, it's even smaller than that, as far as the difference. So we don't expect any changes to the neighborhood except trips up and down. We're also, as you're probably aware, we're planning improvements to Dell Road, which is driven by this project as well, providing that accessibility to new owners of houses in this area, essentially not allowing them to go down this gravel road that's currently there wasn't acceptable to the city. So we're partnering with this developer as well, and in some sense that we want to also make an improvement to this neighborhood by providing a access to the south down to Flying Cloud Drive, like you've seen in the past, like Eden Prairie Road and some of those other plans and projects we've done around the town. So,
okay. Thank you. Any questions regarding traffic?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Farr.
I bet there are people in the audience that might be interested in the construction sequencing of the Dell Road improvements versus the construction of the project itself.
Yep, Commissioner Farr, the projects are planned to go almost at the same time. Our plan is to start building Dell Road and reconstructing. One of the biggest pieces of that project is reconstructing the culvert that crosses Riley Creek. It's beyond its useful life, and so we want to replace that culvert. It's a big project to do as well, but we would plan to tackle part of that in the the fall of 2025. Our project's likely a 2-year span, so it'll go through the end of 25 and then beginning of 26 through that construction season as well. Likely while this is all being built as well. I believe the phasing for this is to build those those flat buildings as well. And so the projects will be kind of going on at the same time.
Okay. And if a follow-up question, I also would anticipate that we're going to get some questions from the neighbors who live north of this development as to the distribution of traffic. If they don't immediately go out to Dell Road and they go north and east instead and end up in the single-family neighborhood, are those streets appropriately designed to accommodate this additional traffic and for safety, public safety?
Yep, the current traffic on Dell Road's like less than 1,000 trips a day. This is gonna trip probably over 1,000, but this Dell Road's a major collector road. We have several of those in town, like Mitchell Road, Duck Lake Trail, Homeward Hills, those types of roads. Those carry 3,000 to 4,000 trips a day. This is gonna be still on the lowest end of one of our major collector routes. So no, again, the traffic study studied the intersections all the way almost up to Pioneer Trail in terms of their capacity, and they remain in a level of service A, which is 0 to 9 second delay throughout the whole corridor. So no real issues. They did provide they took an engineer's best estimate at where the distribution would go through the site. There are some trips that might end up to the east side over to Lafayette. The majority of them, 80%, are going to go out to Dell, and then even some of those will split, obviously, north and south with the improvement to Dell Road down to Flying Cloud Drive. That might end up being the best route to some people to get down there and then go east and west. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding that?
I just want to clarify the improvements to Dell Road south to Flying Cloud. What's that going to look like?
yes, Commissioner, that's going to look like what it looks like north of Crestwood Terrace. So it's a collector road. It's going to be 32 feet wide, curb to curb, with a trail, multi-use trail, just like you see that goes along the park north on Dell. So same typical section through there.
And we're thinking end of 2026 for that completion?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question for Jeremy, if that's appropriate.
Of course.
Just a question regarding density again. Are there other areas in the community near a bluff that have similar type of density or developments?
Similar type of density kind of speaks to the number of units per acre, right? And I haven't done the calculation of the other developments, but I know that we, this is coming in at 3.6 or 3.5 units an acre, which isn't, without having data behind me, I believe there's other developments or other neighborhoods that approach that level of units per acre. What we found in some situations where you have single-family homes that back up to a bluff or back up to a sensitive area, the property line kind of moves. The property owners want to put a fire pit in the back, or they want to put their shed kind of, oh, that looks better in that location, and that's not technically on their property. Or they may have a patio in their backyard, and then that just drains over the bluff. An attached family project like we see here, we can manage that better. So to answer your question, I believe we have similar densities or units per acre in a bluff type situation. I don't know of another offhand multifamily product in that type of situation. I think we probably do, but I just can't point to one at this stage.
Hennepin Village, just down the road, I think on
Hennepin
Charles.
Village has quite a bit of single family there.
That was developed maybe, 15 years ago?
That was built 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's on par
2024,
with-
yeah.
That's on par
What's
with
the
what we're
name of
looking at. Hennepin Village.
Okay.
It's, just west of the airport. On Cloud, right up on the bluffs there. Yeah, it's right at the head of the bluff.
But that just highlights the benefit, I think, of the multifamily product here, is we can protect that bluff a little bit better, because you're not going to have somebody just kind of putting their fire pit into an open space of trees or something like that, which we've seen in other neighborhoods.
But the 3.6 homes per acre builds in the entire south half of this property, does it not?
Yep. Yes.
So in terms of what's being developed, it's going to be more like 7 or 8 homes per acre.
We look at the gross acreage.
I understand.
Yeah. I mean, you can certainly slice and dice it all you want in terms of how the space is used, but we look at gross density for the property. And so, you know, while there are some protected areas that couldn't be developed, we don't necessarily know that when we're creating the comprehensive plan, you know, when this was started way back when. And so that's why we use the gross density and apply that number over the buildable portion of the property.
Thank you. All right, why don't we go to our public comment portion of the meeting now? If anyone, we received a few statements in the packet and another one tonight, but anyone is welcome to come up and speak for or against this project or offer comments or concerns. Just coming up. Good evening. If you would state your name for the record, please, and your address.
Good evening, Mark and Beth Reese. We reside at 9744 Lafayette Drive, Eden Prairie. Our home is actually the one that's illustrated in the slide that you saw earlier. But
I sent a letter to Jeremy. Did you all receive this letter?
Yes. Yes, that was in our packet. Yes.
So you know what we're talking about?
Yes.
He's going to reiterate it.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to comment. 22 years ago, we moved into this area. It's a low-density, single-family home. And one of the primary factors in us purchasing our home was the actual traffic flow, where there was not a lot of traffic going on Lafayette, Geisler Drive. And the traffic that was there was limited to the residents themselves. And so now, with this proposal, while it is very well thought out and conceived, there's going to be a significant impact on our neighborhood. The traffic flow, as stated in our preliminary meetings, is actually 175 cars per day going north from Crestwood Trail onto Canopy Drive. And then I expect about 3/4 of those will go to the east and then up Jonathan and over to Dell, up north to Pioneer, and then the other third would probably go west. The other thing I'd like to point out in this concept here is that the exit flow from the townhome communities, which is the most dense part of this plan, more than likely half of the eastern portion of those townhomes are all going to exit north through Canopy Trail there. I bring this up because of the impact through our neighborhood, which we purchased as a low-density single-family home. And now we're essentially increasing that traffic flow probably 10 times or more, going past Canopy Trail, which is currently closed, over to Lafayette and Geisler. The other thing is that there's a number of families with small children, one of which, actually two of which are represented here tonight. And they might comment, but there's a number of families around Lafayette Drive with kids under age 10, and along Jonathan there. And so currently those kids, a lot of times they'll be playing ball in the street, or they'll be riding their bicycles or trikes, whatever, along the sidewalk and the street area. And there are some safety issues, concerns there that will be spoken about. So the other point I'd like to make is that in this development, you'll see about 6 acres of green space, which is the north part of Crestwood Drive, and then the pond that is there below. Now, there's only 3 houses along the west side of Dell Road that are being impacted, whereas there's probably 25 to 30 along Geisler and Lafayette. Now, from those 4 on the northeast corner back up to my home and my neighbor's home, the rest of the homes after that, there's plenty of buffer to conceal any of that, the villa buildings there.
Which house is ours?
Yeah, they do. And so, yeah, our home is the corner one on the lot there.
We're number 15, so we're being impacted by all the flow out that exit, which could be, so we're number 15, which is on the corner of what they call villas, but they're really standard homes because they're housing 3 bedrooms. I think that's a pretty standard house with a upstairs. So it's a full-size house. It might not have a basement, but they maybe are putting in basements. I haven't been told fully. But the traffic could go 50% or it could go 100% out that exit right there because it is going to be quicker to go that way. If you think it's quicker to get onto Dell and go through the new neighborhood, I don't think so. It's quicker to go that way out through Jonathan and through an existing neighborhood, which was never developed to handle this kind of traffic. This was supposed to be a residential neighborhood with just single-family homes, is what we were always believed, because that's the way it was zoned when we bought it 20 years ago. And now they want to zip through, 900 vehicles a day potentially through there. And then the second big issue that we're adamant about is why do we have 2 houses staring at us right as close as you can possibly get to the property line, 2 of them, and nobody else in the development has 2 staring right in their backyard, as close as you can get, the 20-foot setback. There's barely a tree in that setback there at the 20-foot because most of them have died, and I don't know why, but it's a very thin foliage at most in the summertime. And so I've just asked that we move the whole development, shift it to the west, like 30 feet, and move that walking path over 30 feet. And that way I don't have 2 houses staring at me day and night. It's not that much to ask. And you can put a few more trees in there, which would allow for a better buffer and setback to the traffic. If you look at a full-blown, they have a picture of my house and how it is faced with 2 houses, and nobody else has the impact of the houses right behind them. So they could even eliminate one, and I think that wouldn't affect their density or their profit. At $1.3 million on a house, I think they've got enough profit.
Regarding the community gardens, the developer neglected to mention that this is not all benevolent. They're not just doing community service and providing the community garden. They're going to charge per lot, and there's going to be a homeowners association fee yearly for those garden lots. So perhaps they can discuss that amongst the city council here, or the planning commission. So I think it's a little far-fetched to charge for the community garden space to purchase those lots and give all that open space north and south of the Crestwood Terrace and yet have such high density in the northeast corner. So what I'd like to see happen is if a plan similar to this is approved, we would like, as a concession for the city, to close Canopy Trail through traffic. And you might say, well, gee, that doesn't make sense because of traffic flow, but I'd remind you that Settlers Ridge has been in place for about 25 years ago. In the first section of Settlers Ridge, which was much higher density than this, with single-family homes, only had 1 exit to Pioneer Trail. It wasn't until about 15 years ago that Settlers West was added, and there's a secondary access to Pioneer Trail now over there. So with probably 3 to 4 times the volume of people and traffic flow. So if you were to approve the Settlers Ridge with that kind of traffic flow density going out 1 exit, you can certainly do that with this development. And I'm sure the families that have enjoyed a low-density neighborhood would like to have that closed off, and so their children won't be affected, and to the extent necessary with the foliage and the landscaping done, there would be minimal impact to the community that we've enjoyed for over 20 years. Okay. Do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Thank you for
time.
your comments. Ted Melby?
My name is Ted Melby, and I live in Eden Prairie, 11881 Germain Terrace. In my lifetime, I was an attorney. I gave up my ticket in 2014. My wife says I'm now a recovering attorney. So with that said, I had a copy printed today of what I think you have in front of you. And I want you to turn to page 3 on your packet. Do you have that 70 pages of document? Okay, page 3.
It was a small one.
The developer is requesting waivers. I was city attorney in Montgomery, Minnesota for 31 years. We moved to Hackensack, and I continued on as their city attorney until I gave up my ticket. They're requesting waivers. It's a term I've never heard of. The only term I'm familiar with, and which should be applicable to evaluating these so-called waivers, is a variance, and that's pursuant to Minnesota Statutes 462. So unless they have can show me some legislative act relating to waivers, the Chapter 462 determines the legality of all of these so-called waivers. So I say apply Chapter 462. I can't tell you how many waivers there are, but there's waivers all over every page, well, many of the pages which you look at. Then I want to move to page, I thought I was going to go to page 4. Yeah, page 4. None of the outlots, including the community garden, may be developed without platting. Grammatically, it would be without platting. None of the outlots in the community, including the community garden, may be developed. My suggestion is what was given is in jeopardy of being platted. And so I suggest you remove the last 2 words so that reads none of the outlots, including the community garden, may be developed. Page 10. Being close to the river bluff, there is a potential for historical features related to prior occupancy of the land. That would be the indigenous people. In the event evidence is found during construction, the developers require, if it's found during construction, means he rips into something, and then he has to report what he found to whoever. I think you got the cart before the horse. There should be an archaeological study done to see if there are historical features on that land. And in an old recommendation to the city, going back 30, 40 years ago, that was a prerequisite when you're developing land in Eden Prairie, that there be an archaeological study. We have lots with a gravesite on it in Eden Prairie. So rather than tearing it up and finding something, I would suggest you do an archaeological study to see if there are any historical features on that piece of ground. Lastly, on page 10, it's in the airport safety zone for the Flying Cloud Airport. I had the delightful pleasure of suing the city of, I'll come up with the name, on an inverse condemnation case dealing with safety zones, airport safety zones. They considered it not to be a taking of the landowner's rights. When it was all said and done, we tried 11 cases, and the landowners recouped $3 million. So I'm familiar with those zones, and the clients that we represented were at the exterior, at the end of the cone-shaped zones. So we were at the outer edges of it. It becomes more restrictive as you get closer to the airport. But those were in the last zone, and they prohibited anyone from having anything out in the field. They couldn't have a tractor, they couldn't have a hay bale, they couldn't have a garden or a picnic table. So it says the airport had no comment. Well, the airport has a safety zone map, and I suggest that you go to the airport, Flying Cloud Airport, and get a copy of the safety zones and see what is and what is not permitted in the area where this development is proposed. I think that's all I can suggest that you do for due diligence, and that's the least that we can do is due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to leave? Would you like to come up next? Yeah, come on. Would you just please state your name for the record, though?
Yeah, Becky Somerville, 9735 La Prairie Drive. I live very close to where Mark does. If you look right across La Prairie Drive, right across from the Riley Creek Trail, that's where we live. And my main concern is about them opening the road as well. My son's already been hit by one car.
Sort of.
Yeah. And just, I think when you live there, you really realize that people will go out that direction to shortcut Jonathan Road up into Dell Road. So I do hear them say that it's going to be 80% traffic is going to go out to Dell Road. I think in reality, that's not going to be the case. I think everybody's trying to shave a minute or two off their commute, and we'll end up doing that. There's a lot of young kids in the neighborhood, so that's obviously my primary concern. But I also want to bring up that the parking lot there for Riley Creek Trail is right there. So you're going to get cars heading towards the development, going head on into that as well. And you have a lot of people who also walk the neighborhood to get to that trail. So you're going to have a lot of people crossing over that street into that development type area as well. So just that increased flow of traffic with as much foot traffic as there is right there, both from kids and adults, pets, I don't feel like it's going to be a safe situation for anybody, and it could be very dangerous for the kids, obviously. You want to say something?
So like, wait, it's if there's like 900 more cars crossing the traffic zones, like for all the kids playing at the neighborhood, there's going to be a lot more bad stuff happening.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments. Let's see. Richard Copy.
My name is Richard Copy. I live at 9872 Crestwood Terrace. I live just across Dell Road from the project, the first cul-de-sac, right on Riley Creek. I don't have the concern that the Lafayette or La Forette people do, and I understand that's a huge issue. But I do have a concern that the city of Eden Prairie is not pulling things together very well. Let me explain. Your former speaker was a recovering attorney. I'm a recovering city engineer. I was a city engineer for many, many years in St. Louis Park, so I understand what you're up against. And I do think that the trails, the movement of pedestrians in Eden Prairie, when we moved here, we were so enhanced by that. First thing I did when I came to this city about 6 years ago and bought our retirement home was I said, what's going to happen to that gravel road out there? And the answer I got at the city was, when the farm is developed, we'll have those answers. Well, I see it all coming, but I don't see it being pulled together very well. For example, I've been to 3 meetings. First time I heard about what's going to happen to Dell Road was tonight from your city engineer. I still don't know exactly the way it's going to be designed as it goes into Flying Cloud Drive. I don't know about pedestrian crossings. There's a lot of trails along Dell Road, as you know, and you're going to have people crossing from Crestwood Park. You're going to have people going to that nature center that's up by La Forette Drive. You're going to have people going all through this area, and I don't see a plan for that being developed. I have yet to see the plan for Dell Road, as we heard tonight. I heard tonight the first time it's 32 feet wide with a trail. Kind of like to see it laid out a little bit better. I'm worried about speeds on Dell Road. You're now going to have a section of Dell Road from 212 all the way to Flying Cloud Drive with one signal at Pioneer Road. That's all you got. And my wife and I, we walk our dog and we walk around the parks and the beautiful trails all the time. And on Dell Road, we constantly are seeing people going way too fast, going down Dell Road. And then they come to the gravel, they slow down, because if you know that gravel section, you don't go fast through that area. You're taking your life in your hands. But that's not going to be the case when it's 32 feet wide with a trail. So I think that should be part of this project. For example, maybe you need to put a traffic roundabout at Crestwood Terrace and Dell Road as part of this development. Maybe that would help control the traffic a little bit better than just having an uninterrupted Dell Road. Something to think about. And maybe I'm addressing the wrong group here. I know you're not the city council, but you are a planning group. And it's certainly, you've got the city engineer with you tonight. All of this stuff, I think, should be part of this project. I'm really concerned about the trail systems as well. I've yet to see what's going to happen to the trail along Riley Creek. I asked that question many years ago, and I was told again when the farm is developed, we're going to put a trail from the nature center to the east all the way over to Riley, Lake Riley. I don't know when that plan is in the schedule. It would be nice to know that. You're asking this developer to give you quite a bit of land along the creek so you can do a trail, yet I see no plans for it. When my wife and I asked the city when the trail would be done, the person we talked to said in the next 10 years. Well, hopefully before we pass on, we can walk on that trail. But I think that should be part of your planning right now, because you're getting the land, you're getting the development done. Seal it all together. Make it all part of one big plan. I think it would be good to see. My last comment is on the community gardens. I don't see that traffic being part of your traffic study. I did look at the traffic study. I read it. I didn't see any cars or any traffic laid out in the study for the community gardens. But if you're going to have 250 plats of land, which I heard tonight, if I heard it right, 250 plats of land during the summertime, I would think would draw some traffic, wouldn't you? That should be part of your traffic study. That's just more traffic. It's going to probably come on Dell Road. Who knows where it'll come from. I got to believe it's going to be more than just from the neighborhood that is being developed. So that should be looked at. The other thing I asked the developer at one of the meetings I went to, I said, can you give us an example of what this is going to look like, this community gardens? And he said, no, I don't know of anything. He said, I think the city has one over by the senior center. So I went over and looked and didn't find it. Maybe there is one, but I couldn't find it. It would be nice to see an example of what we're getting into. I heard Commissioner Kirk question the community gardens tonight. His question kind of tells me that we don't know everything about this. And yet you would think we would have more information, more details on how it's going to work. Where's the money going to go to that they're going to charge for the plots of land? What is that going to be used for? What is it going to look like 8 months out of the year when it's not used for the gardens? Is it just going to be a dump area? I mean, and what is it going to look like? So anyway, those are my points. I think the developers' plans look, in my opinion, look good. But I think there's a lot of stuff that should be pulled together here that I haven't heard being pulled together, such as Dell Road, traffic speeds, the community gardens, trails. So thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you. Let's see, Molly and Bob Dewar. Good evening. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Bob Dewar. I'm a resident. I live at 9688 Geisler Road, so kind of up and right around the corner there. So just a couple comments, and it came back to some of the things that were said this evening. Commissioner Grote hit it right on the head when he said that when we're talking about the density, we did the math on the whole thing, and then we said that we're going to develop this part, but we're not taking that into account. And I understand you can slice it any way. I understand that, but you can just say, well, we took the whole earth and most of it's water, so it's not that dense. So I think we need actual numbers as to what the density is there, as opposed to saying we can slice it any way we want. And just something that occurred to me, or I noticed while Mr. Barnhart was speaking, it might have just been a slip of the tongue, but he said we many times during his presentation. I did not know he was part of the development group. I know he worked with them, but he did say we an awful lot during his presentation. So I feel like there's a lot here that the community doesn't want to happen. I mean, I really feel for the folks who have the houses right there. I mean, why do we have to put houses all the way down there? You put all this green space in, but then you took that one spot, or at least the developer did, and jammed it right up against the other houses. So if we were trying to do that, why didn't you make the buffer all the way across? I understand that money is the motivating factor, but I don't think it should be. Now, I've heard the counselor say here tonight that, well, if we left this for single family, they could just butt up right to the back of it. They could be 10 feet away. Right. Yeah, it could be worse, but you don't have to let it be. We can be better than that. We can say, hey, we don't have to just jam as many houses in here as possible and see how much money the developer can make off of it. And then we talked about that this is going to go to the affordable living in Eden Prairie, and then talked about homes in $1.2 to $1.3 million. I don't know the definition of affordability, but that doesn't sound like it. And the traffic, I mean, the city engineer said that not that much traffic is going to go this way. Most will go this way. But everybody pointed it out. The entrance, half the garage is going to come out that one side, at least half. So why would they drive all the way across the back? So half the traffic, at least, is going to go right up that trail and sprinkle through all those neighborhoods where all of our kids are walking, and they're walking down the streets, and they're playing out there. And we're just saying, well, that's okay. We can. It's not that many, so we can take that. So I just feel that it shouldn't be, the money shouldn't be the overdriving factor on this and what it is. And yes, everybody pointed out it could be worse, but we can be better too. That's all I've got.
Thank you for your comments. Let's see. Chris Breet. Vig, I believe. Good evening. If you would state your name for the record, please.
Yeah, hi. Good evening. My name is Gurpreet Vig. I live on Geisler Road. I'm one of the neighbors whose property is abutting this proposed development. I'm one of the houses on the north of that. And my comments, I think some of them have been addressed by, I think, Mr. Cuppy, who spoke about, the previous city engineer who spoke. I do appreciate all the work. I've attended the 2 neighborhood meetings that were held by the developer. I do appreciate the work that has gone into this project. I know the developer and the city planner, all of you are trying to meet various goals and thread the needle on all the different aspects of it. And I feel overall the work and the planning that has been gone into this is fairly decent. The comments that I have are specifically related to the proposed community garden. And I think as others have pointed out, this was brought to our attention at the second neighborhood meeting. I think in the first neighborhood meeting, there was a different plan. And then, so I think there are a lot of unanswered questions. I mean, in concept, it looks really good on paper that there's going to be a community garden. People can, grow their vegetables, whatever they want to grow. But we just don't know how this will come into effect. And I think other speakers have raised the same comments. We asked the same questions of the developer. We just don't know the answers. And I would appreciate knowing from the Planning Commission, if this moves forward, when and how would you expect to get those answers from the developer in terms of how the economics are going to work and how this is going to work out? Because the packet that is, I read through that, it seems it's going to be a non-profit homeowners association that's going to manage it. And if there are going to be 250 plots, will they be leased out every year? There are so many questions that we just don't know answers to. So it might be helpful to know if there is an example of any other city having done this. Again, in concept, it looks good, but whether the practical realities are going to be met by the plan, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see. Ryan Devon. Do you want to Good evening. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Sorry, I'm not dressed as well as the rest of you, but my name is Ryan Nevin. I live at 9839 Crestwood Terrace. So a lot of the people that have been here have been talking about, Lafayette, and I agree with all of their comments about, hey, half of it's going to go to the east, northeast, and through the neighborhood, and there's going to be a lot of traffic, 50 or so cars, whatever it might be, lots of traffic. Okay, so let's say we condone that off, which I propose, and I think it makes sense with the park access that is there and the number of kids that I see going through there as I run around. Not on a night like tonight because of all the rain, but so if you condone that off, where else do they go? I was just fiddling with my phone in the back, and I don't know if you guys do grocery pickup from Target in Eden Prairie, but they have a tendency to not have everything that I need. And the best Target that I've found is in Chaska. Well, the best way to get to Chaska's Target is to Pioneer Trail. How am I going to get to Pioneer Trail? I'm not going to go north up Dell. I'm going to go Crestwood Terrace. There's over a dozen kids that live on Crestwood Terrace, 2 of which are my own. A lot of the families that live on that street are not here tonight because they have kids that are our kids' age, if not younger. So there's a really strong concern that we have of, somebody had already pointed out, yeah, people slow down because of the dirt road. You get that dirt road out of the way and take care of with the paved road, you'll increase the traffic and the speeds. I would say that by forcing so many cars to have to go west, and I was trying to think of other locations, and again, the last time that there was a notification that there was going to be an open forum for speaking, I got the notification the day of the meeting, so I was not able to attend. Fortunately, we heard about it this time, and we were able to come, and the kids are wanting to get home, obviously, because it's after 8. But this is pretty important for at least one of us in that neighborhood to be present to say that we're very much concerned with the amount of traffic, and it's already been stated by a gentleman to my left of, yes, affordability is not 900,000, it's not 1.2 million, it's not 1.4 million. I understand why this has been figured out the way it is, because it's trying to make it more accessible for more people, and I understand that. But as others in the audience have already mentioned, social studies needs to be done of the area. I don't know if anybody has ever gardened. Has anybody here gardened before who can raise their hand? So why do we not garden? It's not very stress reducing. There is a neighbor of mine, I forget his parents' last name, but anyway, they live right by that intersection that you're proposing. If you drive there, you'll see that they have a pretty sizable outside garden. They tend and toil it, I don't know how many months out of the year, and it looks like the rabbits finally got them. So they're not really putting this effort due to vermin. Now, there's certainly ways that you can go about getting rid of vermin or preventing vermin, but are they naturally safe ways? I don't know. I grew up on a farm. We used plenty of pesticides. We didn't have any problems with vermin. But now a community garden is being set up with lots of lots. Are you going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? They were mentioned that there was going to be a water spigot. Okay, is that going to be city water or is it going to be spring water? What's the anticipated usage of those lots? That's a big question, I think, is on a lot of people's minds. You can put this out for a lot of people to use, but is it going to be used? And then is it going to be overrun with weeds? Aesthetics, to me, I don't really care so much, but I just want to point it out. Is it going to be actually the good use of that space, or do you use it for other means? I don't have any ideas for you, but was there anything else? So the question is, where would people park for the community gardens? And I think somebody mentioned that already as well, is you don't really have any parking. You have the public parking a little bit south of that outlot C. But then in the springtime, there's going to be a lot of traffic because you got to get out there, you got to sow the land, sow the seeds, whatever else you have to do. And then you have to till it, and you have to attend to it. So where are they all going to park? Because there's guest parking for the flats. There's a very small public parking for the dog park. But where is everybody else going to park if they are working on their gardens? I mean, right now there's still, there's even a issue today when there's soccer games going on in that park that people are parking up and down the Lafayette Drive, I think it is. But main thing, I got 2 kids. They're both under 10. Neither of them have been fortunately hit. I hope to keep it that way. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's everyone that wrote yes. Is there anyone else that would like to come up and address? Yeah, please come forward. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I don't have much to say. I am...
Name and address.
My name is Imad. My address is 9751 Lafayette Drive. I'm a neighbor across the street from Beth and Mark, and Beck is also, she is our neighbor. So I have 3 kids. In fact, I've been suffering from flying cloud noise already, and now it's going to be air and ground noise. And so yes, I have 3 kids, small kids, and we live right away from the Canopy Trail into the Riley Creek Conservation. So in the east side access, I don't know, when I moved in 7 years ago, I never thought this is going to be a heavy traffic area at all. The way I looked at it, and I never thought there will be any new constructions in my neighborhood. And I understand what you have been planning for, but I have a deep concern about the traffic coming through the neighborhood into this new construction. I know a lot of small streets in the area, and I don't want to be selfish just talking about the east side. I know some of them talking about the east side as well. Again, I think, as I can see, a lot of concerns, and I just hope that there is a solution for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward and speak? Yep. If you would state your name and address, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Andrew Graybiel. I'm at 9888 Crestwood Terrace. So my home is the second home just west of Dell Road, just off of the western driveway to this development. This aerial view is probably the most benign way to look at a 3-story apartment building. And I don't think it really captures the scale of what you're building here, which is a very large development, and certainly 100 and 115 homes, whatever it is. Crestwood Terrace has 60 addresses, maybe fewer than 60, 80 if you include Dell Drive. So currently, 115 homes is a big addition to Crestwood Terrace, which is already a fairly small neighborhood. I think my biggest concern does, again, have to do with the traffic, right? We're talking about a lot of additional cars in the area. We're talking about a large apartment building. Virtually 100% of the traffic in and out of this neighborhood is going to be by car. There's no public transportation around here. The closest facility to walk to, if you wanted a convenience store, is in Chanhassen, the Quick Trip, 3 miles away. The closest convenience store in Eden Prairie is 3.5 miles away. So none of this is walking, right? All of the traffic that's coming in and out of this neighborhood is going to be vehicular traffic. No public transportation, no walkable transportation. And so I think that the Planning Commission ought to consider how to discourage or at least encourage the traffic to go where you want it to go, whether that's south on Dell Road, whether that's north on Dell Road. Throughout that west driveway to this development, the most direct route to Pioneer Trail is through Crestwood Terrace. And so this could, triple the traffic, quadruple the street traffic across Crestwood Terrace. And so that's a concern, certainly. And so I would like the Planning Commission to at least consider, how do we discourage that traffic from crossing the neighborhood of Crestwood Terrace, right? There's no street lights on Crestwood. There's no overhead lights on Crestwood Terrace. It's dark. There's no painted road lines. I mean, it is a quiet single-family neighborhood road, whereas Dell Road isn't, right? Dell Road is more the throughway where you expect traffic to go. And so I would like the Planning Commission to consider, how do we discourage the traffic from taking Crestwood Terrace, discourage the traffic from going out the east side through that neighborhood, and encourage the traffic to go on Dell Road. And so I don't know if there's, if there's speed limiting things or other ways to divert traffic or arrange it, but I think that has to be part of the plan. Because otherwise you are introducing a whole lot of vehicular traffic into the surrounding neighborhood. Again, this is a big 3-story apartment building. This isn't a handful of single-family homes here that we're talking about. This is a big development. So please consider the impact of that traffic on the surrounding neighborhood. Thank you.
Did I see someone else that wanted to come up? Yeah, come. If you'd state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Hamilton Susted, and I live at 9711 Geisler Road. I'm on the north side of that development there. Just to be quick about it, I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made around the traffic and the density of this project. I bought my home 6 months ago, knew none of this. I found out 2 days ago when I got the notice and started talking to some of my neighbors. As we looked it up, this proposal apparently is a lot more aggressive than what was originally discussed last year, and a lot more development than what was originally talked about. I agree with the traffic issues. I agree with the concern on the upper right-hand side there, that those are extremely close. I would also say, though, that even though it looks nice on this picture here, that isn't a huge amount of room in between the buffer. So I'm in kind of that middle area where that buffer zone is. If you look at that whole line on the north end of it, all of those trees, they're like 80% ash trees, and they're all dead or dying. So that all of that privacy is going away. We will all be looking at buildings, large buildings. And while the villa homes are said to be mainly single-story living, they're not single-story. They're intended to live on one story, but they're building them two-story. And then you have three-story all along that whole line there, which, again, my understanding of the original project was there were much fewer buildings there. So I guess maybe given some of the conversation that we've heard earlier that it could be worse, okay. But I think it's worth looking at, does it need to be this big? Does it need to have the traffic that we're talking about here? Can we mitigate some of the issues with the children? And none of this is going to be very private. While they don't have to do that buffer zone, realistically, something needs to be done across that whole north line. So, because the aesthetic will be completely different for everybody there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? All right, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing, and that's up for the discussion.
So move.
Second that.
I have a motion to close public hearing and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Public comment portion is closed. There's definitely a few topics that kind of rose to the top. Is there something someone would like to start with that gets a little more discussion around?
Well, let me start. I think I'm the senior person on the Planning Commission, so it comes to me to make this little talk when we have big public hearings. And again, the role of the Planning Commission, we're all volunteers. We're just citizens who have volunteered our time to do this. So we are here simply to represent what we feel is best for Eden Prairie. And two things that I've learned on being on the Planning Commission. One is the city invests a lot of resources in doing their homework on developments like this. Jeremy and his team, but also engineering and Parks and Rec, are very heavily involved. We have representation at all of our meetings from those parts, and you'd be amazed at how much time and effort goes in. And I think when I came on the Planning Commission, I had no concept of that. And frankly, from some of the questions we've gotten today, you haven't had the opportunity to see that either. So there is a lot of homework that's done and a lot of work that goes into this. This has been going on for a year, right, Jeremy, this project? So there's been a year's worth of on and off effort on this project. So a lot of work, a lot of thinking goes into it. Secondly, one thing that a lot of people forget about is, we talk about the developers, and how the developers are making a lot of money. I'm not going to even comment on that. The bottom line is the owner of this property has rights, just like the people who live around the property have rights. And it's important that we look for good balance, and good balance in the owner being represented, what the city wants to do being represented, and obviously what the neighborhood wants and what's the impact on the neighborhood. But it isn't all one or the other. It's a balance there. And that's what our job is to do here, is to try to take in the input. And the importance of these public hearings is huge. And I'm glad we had as many people as we had, and I'm glad we have all the comments, because it gives us insight into things. But our job ultimately is to take this, have a discussion, and ultimately make a vote. But we don't make the final decision. The city council does. So what the city council is going to do is learn from what's going on here, and then they're going to have their own public hearing, and you'll have another opportunity to do that, to have your input into it. So this is a very public process, and the thing that I keep trying to remember is it's a balanced process. It has to be a balanced process. There are a lot of players in here, and we have to take the input from all of the players and come out with the best solution. And as we all know, when that happens, not everybody's going to be perfectly happy with every aspect of the solution. And if everybody's relatively happy and only a little bit unhappy about certain things, then we've probably done our job. So that's my soapbox, and I'll get off of it right now and let us get to addressing some of the issues.
Thank you, Commissioner Kirk. Is someone, Commissioner Farr, did you want to?
I'll try. I think in my notes, the two most popular reoccurring topics were traffic, especially through that existing northern neighborhood, and just let it be known right away, public safety is one of our key, most important things we look for, and I know it's number one on staff's issue. So public safety is paramount in our city. Nobody wants to do anything dangerous, especially to our children. The other one is the lack of detail, I think, on the gardens area. There's a lot of questions about the gardens. That was unexpected to me coming in tonight, but it really resonated with me when one of you, I forget who, but thank you, said, what is it going to look like in the wintertime? The applicant's landscape plan leaves it open. In other words, there's no landscaping proposed within the garden area, thinking that it would all be garden plots, and sure, it would go to fallow during the off season. Maybe it could be more than that, and I'm not going to tell the applicant what he ought to do or things like that, but it sounds like it's evolving. The ideas haven't gelled yet. He may want to speak to that further, or he or she. It could be a University of Minnesota landscape arboretum type of a gathering spot where that central gazebo that was on the TV here maybe was enhanced to be something more of an open space where people could gather, kind of like the Mayor Harris Pavilion, if you know where that is, over by the bus stop end of the terminus of the light rail. So those two main topics. So I would say that we as a planning commission maybe could offer some comments back to the applicant talking about how he or we should think that community garden should be defined more, maybe for council, in terms of maybe there are some fixed features that are there, or they at least come up with more of a concept on how it's going to evolve if there's not an appetite for a lot of people taking it and there's some extra space. What happens? What if it's really successful and there becomes a parking problem? There's a parking lot across the street at the park, but gee, that's for the park, right? Kids' soccer games, things like that. So maybe there ought to be a proof of parking plan at the garden area in anticipation of there being demand from outside of this local community. There's probably enough demand here, but nobody knows that. So I think the point is well taken that let's prepare ourselves for what it would take to park some cars, what it would take to make a public amenity space, a fixed public amenity space there, so that maybe they plant some pine trees so the thing looks pretty good in the wintertime. So I think maybe just some thoughtfulness on their behalf to come back with something I think would be an appropriate gesture. Maybe not to this body, but to council. And just going back on the public safety thing, the other one that I started out talking about, I heard a lot from the city engineer about relatively low traffic counts. There's a lot of acres here, and whether it's single family or multifamily, there's going to be cars, of course. Nobody's going to be walking to Eden Prairie Center. There's going to be cars. But streets by their design, when people design streets in cities, all of your streets are vastly over-designed. My street that I live on, my daughter grew up on just like your children are now in Eden Prairie. And so we were careful, of course. Sometimes they run out onto the street, and that's parenting, right? So we have sidewalks to convey pedestrians, and we have streets to convey cars. There's more than enough capacity for cars. If speeding is a problem, that's why we have enforcement rules, and you can call people for that. The connectivity that they're showing to walk pedestrians over to, of course, the Riley Creek Park. There's the parking lot there that's just off that diagram to the right there, of course. On that first street, is it pronounced LaFournet? Something, sorry if I mispronounced that. So I think, these people that are gonna buy these homes are gonna be your neighbors. They may come over and borrow a cup of sugar, they may share your sidewalk, they may drive past your house, and you're welcome to drive past their house as well. They're gonna be your neighbors, they're gonna be your friends. So we don't wanna make this an adversarial situation. So that's my thing about public safety, and I would recommend further dialogue with the applicant on having them come up with a little more strategic information on how that garden is going to come together.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. Would you like to offer some comments about the garden? No?
Kelsey. So again, Cody Dietrich speaking with Lake West and Kelsey Thompson. A couple things we can talk about on that piece. So you guys may have found it in your long packet of items, but we put together a couple of weeks ago a memo basically detailing out how we expect the community gardens to run. So ideally, it's going to be broken into about 4 quadrants, and we're going to build it out in phases. So as we fill the first phase up, so let's call that 75 plots, then we'll go on to the second phase and go on and on as we get more demand. Until that time, it'll remain open green space. The plan is to have fencing around it. We'll add additional trees for aesthetics to try to make it additionally pleasing. And then going back to the operation of it, it will be in that nonprofit. We will not be taking any money from it. It'll be meant to, the fees will be meant to maintain and operate the community garden itself. So there'll be likely an initiation fee, and they're looking at a multi-year lease structure to make sure people are invested in coming back to take care of the gardens. If they are unable to or don't maintain their gardens, we will send them violations, fine them, and or remove their lease terms. So we typed up some general terms in that. That'll be further defined in the nonprofit as we get moving forward. And the plan for the gardens then is to be tilled at the start of the year for the whole overall gardens. And then at the end of the year, clean it up and till it again. So it's left as kind of a tilled land during the off seasons and just open area. So it's planned out in that sense. There's a couple things of, do we make the plots a little bit larger? Do we make a little bit less of them? How do we go about that? So those are the main things we're still trying to work through and how that piece works. On the parking piece, we have 13 or 14 stalls in that public parking section down by the dog park. Those are geared for that community garden center and the community garden, which are in tandem. The dog run itself will be just for the HOA. It's not going to be a public dog park for the community. So that's going to be a private dog park that will be people parked in the garages or on their own properties. Additionally, Crestwood Terrace Extension will allow for parallel parking along the south side of the street. So we'll have additional parking there because the street will be built wide enough for that piece. So let's call it 30 or 40 stalls to service 200 and some plots. Not everybody's gonna be gardening at the same time. You may not come out every day. You might come out once every 3 days, 4 days. So we feel comfortable with that piece. Additionally, we've been working with the Minnesota Arboretum on talking to them, their master gardener, on how to set this up further. So Kelsey's had a lot more of those conversations and can add to that piece if you want to.
Sure. Yeah, we've been working with the extension program and using their best practices and research
not only for the community garden space, but just for the landscaping plans overall. So talking about the dead and dying ash trees along the perimeter, we are planning to plant, more climate resilient plants that are able to thrive in changing climate, providing ecosystem support for the local environment, requiring lower maintenance, lower use, and having a higher pest and disease tolerance. We also have been exploring, if some backup plans, like if there is not a high demand for the community garden, let's say 150 plots are leased and there's some additional green space, what can that additional green space be used for? And let's face it, half the year there will be snow on the ground, so it'll look like just, open space that's not being used as a community garden for during the winter months.
And then I think aesthetics came to another piece of that. So again, we'll try to have perimeter plantings and or boulevard trees around the perimeter. We have to be careful because we can't plant trees in the drainage and utility easements, which run 10 feet on the perimeter of the property. It's an outlaw, so there's some different pieces to that. You'll see the picture up top, and that's really what it's meant to look like, is something along those lines. Different people are going to plant flowers, some are going to plant produce. It's going to be a mix of all different things, and that's the beauty in it really, is you can be creative how you want, what fits your lifestyle. So we have heard from different other community gardens here in Eden Prairie that they get sold out typically every year, so there seems to be a demand. We did talk to the city originally about potentially trying to donate it to the city for use, but there wasn't an interest in that, so we still want to keep that. We still believe in the mission of that and keeping the legacy tied to the Marshall family. So that's where that really comes from. So, and again, we can shapeshift a little bit, downsize it, but really trying to figure out how to have that self-operating. It'll be tied to the HOA and then be ran by a portion of the board of people who are invested in that portion of the community that are gardeners themselves. So there'll be some backstops to help protect that, but we can shift that and pull it as it evolves and makes sense.
Are there questions around the garden?
I didn't see the community garden memo that you referenced in our packet.
I don't think we got that.
No.
Just so you're aware that we did not receive that, so we're not.
Okay, Jeremy.
Yeah, I received it. That was kind of digging into the management of the community garden, which we don't normally get into as a planning commission, so I didn't provide that. We wanted to be sure that that proper steps or development of how that would work is being worked through, and obviously the city attorney will review that with the HOA documents as part of the final approval. But from a planning commission perspective, that was kind of beyond our scope.
I would just throw my 2 cents in and just push your button a little bit harder on this. It looks like it was laid out by an efficiency expert.
That'd be me.
Right? Okay, I'll grid it out like that. This is a large piece of dirt. How many acres?
2.2 to 2.5.
Okay.
It's just when you start doing the 10 by 10s, it's only 100 square feet, and there's 43,000 square feet in an acre. So
Sure. Yeah, I don't have to plant my petunias in a row. I can make them curve around a little bit. And I think if someone had a guiding principle plan for this, have a landscape architect, play with 3 acres and come up with something creative, it could be something fantastic without adding a lot of money. Put some trees in there, for gosh sakes.
Well, and there could be some parts too where we plant it, or the overall nonprofit plants certain sections of it because it gets hard to manage as it gets staked out and who owns what and everything along those lines once you're in the operation phase of it. So maybe there's some parts that are communal and those are managed by the overall nonprofit to curve it around and add some features, and then centralized portions or west, east, whatever you want to call it, gets actually leased out by people. So there could be some different ways, but we can definitely explore that.
Sure. And I shouldn't draw a parallel to a cemetery, but think of a cemetery, right? There's trees and grass and there's wandering paths in a cemetery. You can do that with a garden pretty easily.
Yep.
Instead of solving an efficiency problem. So I just push you a little bit harder on that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. Other questions around the garden, or Commissioner Taylor?
One question about the garden. So if you were to do away with the garden and not even have it at all, were there any other options you looked at?
Sorry, what was the question?
If we did away, or you did away with the garden, was there any other options you took a look at?
Adding more homes. So it took a few more homes away. And then additionally, it provided that buffering and that green space and just more open space in general. So we just thought that was very important, and again, to the heritage piece. But if that were gone, it would be 3 or 4 more homes, 5, whatever the number is.
If I could comment, I mean, I would welcome a plan. I know you've done many plans, but I would welcome a plan. I know we're not going to fully make Mr. and Mrs. Reese comfortable, but if there was a way to remove that garden and move the villas to the west and bring villas 9 through 15 to the south, that might create more buffer and be less obtrusive than the plan that I've seen here. I think this plan could be reworked, and this whole concept could be moved to the south and cause some of the current owners a lot less heartache. We're not going to make them all happy, and that's not our job here. We're not in the happiness business. We're trying to make a reasonable recommendation for the development.
Can I ask just a clarifying question? When you say south, I don't follow the south because there's not really a...
Plan south. So I want to see a plan with the outlot A gone and the villas moved.
Everything, just move everything west and do west.
Towards the garden. Yes, that's where I was going, Commissioner Sher.
To the left.
So
south is the road, so that's where I was confused.
Villas 9 through 15 would go down away from Mr. Reese's home.
I have a question. That was going to be my initial question. Is there, and I'm sure there's a good reason why that's a slope, or maybe it's the trees you don't want to take down, but where villas 12 to 15 are and where the flats are, is there a reason why you couldn't go more south where it's going more northeast?
We are, as you see it kind of turn to the non-colored shade, that's the bluff line.
Okay.
So if we go any further south, we start tearing down bluff trees and have issues that way. So the bluffs are really what's driving a lot of that piece. And that's a product of connecting the road. And so that all works together. It's been trying to fine tweak that.
But the possibility of shifting the homes to the west towards the garden moves the homes, all of them, further west.
Reducing the
Away
size
from-
of the garden.
Right,
Yes,
that's exactly.
reducing the garden.
Exactly.
Right.
Understood.
And I know we're just spitballing here, each one of us, but just literally, if you trade off the green space south of Crestwood Terrace between your easternmost flats building and Crestwood Terrace, you've got that green space, I'll call it a buffer, on the south side of your road, right? Okay, that looks like it's about, I'm gonna say 40 feet, okay? Take 20 or 30 of that out of there, put it in 13, 14, and 15's backyard, and that buffer zone now all of a sudden becomes more valuable in terms of a site solution.
So the issue with that is all of a sudden then we encroach the setbacks and we trigger about 5 more things with the PUD for the multifamily.
What's setback?
Was that?
What's setback?
The front building setback from the multifamily to the Crestwood Terrace Road.
Let's have Jeremy jump in quickly.
I think what we should be cautious about as a commission is trying to redesign the project at the dais. I think it's better to identify your concerns as a commission and let the developer come back with solutions for that or reasons why that can be met. But I don't see a lot of benefit gained by redesigning it at this stage, at the table. Certainly the developer can make changes and frequently does, but there's a lot of pushing and pulling, and I don't know if we're being productive at this stage.
Fair enough.
All right, thanks, sir.
Can I make a comment just to that? So part of the reason that the open space is needed, right, is because of the waivers. So correct me if I'm wrong here, and I'm new to the commission, so forgive me. So we're going from a low density to a medium density. And then even with the medium density R1 9.5, there are 12 of the 15 lots that require waivers even from that. And if I'm understanding correctly, then if you have so many waivers, then that initiates the sustainable building standards, which then requires the EV, the solar, and then the community garden. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
No.
There's a lot of things kind of mushed together there. The applicant is requesting waivers from the lot area and the lot width requirements for the single-family product, the R1 9.5. So that's the straight zoning with some modification with some waivers, which our PUD process allows flexibility from the strict reading, not a variance, but a waiver. Part of the justification, why staff can support the waivers, is because we're retaining some of that community open space. Because if we didn't have those waivers, then those lots would be 9,500 square feet and wider, and then there'd virtually be no community garden space. And it is somewhat important, I believe, that the community garden space be visible, or else it's forgotten and it's in somebody's backyard and it gets kind of encroached. So we have the waivers, and that's how it was set up. There's no waivers proposed for the multifamily product. That's where the comprehensive plan amendment comes in to allow that type of product there. They do meet the RM 2.5 zoning district requirements, setbacks, density, height, all of those things are satisfied there with no waivers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I think I'm not clear on the sustainable building standards.
Okay.
The requested waivers initiate the sustainable building standards. And isn't the garden part of that?
Not specifically as a list, but it's part of when you look at a PUD and to offset the waivers, you look at what's the overall benefit to the community.
The balance.
The balance. And in this case, the community garden area is part of that balance. When there's a waiver, though, so we have kind of a desired goal as kind of on one side of the ledger. We also have requirements. And when you have a waiver in a PUD, when you have a waiver, there's certain requirements they have to meet, which is solar ready. The structures have to be solar ready. There's EV parking requirements. That's a requirement. There's some other building kind of standards there. The multifamily product is not a waiver. There's no PUD, but they are providing those sustainability goals that we have, the solar panels and the EV charging kind of extra. That's, again, part of that balance that justifies the PUD on the north side. So community garden, sustainable features on the multifamily, the amount of open space, the concessions made on the right-of-way, all of those things kind of help calculate for a benefit to the community in support of the waiver.
And Jeremy, isn't it fair to say on these infill developments like this that waivers such as what we're giving and the trade-off waivers, the trade-offs that you talk about, are not unusual at all? I think many of the projects we've been doing, in fact, I drove through the project right there on the corner of Dell and Pioneer Trail, because that's built out, and that was a project that came through here, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and that had waivers on almost all the lots on size.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to have waivers in an infill project. It's not a guarantee, but
but
what we look for is, again, how it fits and
what the balance is.
What's the balance? Yeah.
And I guess I'm maybe not being clear. I'm not concerned about that as much as I'm trying to get at the size of the community garden is relation to the size of the single-family lots.
And it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. There's no prescribed minimum ratio. It's the package proposed by the development. Does that help justify the waivers requested?
Maybe I could interject if
Well, and the only reason I'm asking all this is because it seems like some of this is tied together, or there's also comments being made about the garden, about the density, about the other things, and they all seem to be correlated together. Maybe they're not, but that's the way I interpreted the staff report anyway. Go ahead.
Thank you. So one of the things that we asked ourselves when we came to this site, and you can imagine we weren't the only developer who came to the Marshalls with a plan. What set us apart from other developers was that we came forth with a plan that was super green. It's this a new green initiative. I shouldn't say it's new, but it's a newer standard that we're seeing, especially in cities. You know, the urban sprawl, as you can see in the greater Eden Prairie, is maximizing hardcover. So what's the opposite of maximizing hardcover? And that's to leave some open green space, not just like a little pocket for a dog park, which we have, which Cody really made sure we had, but that we had some substantive open green space that can be enjoyed, not just by our residents, but by the community. It's a community building experience. So when you're asking, you know, is there some calculation? This was something that the developer, you know, we could put building there, or we could make it smaller, we could add more, you know, units, but this was I would call it a gift, or, you know, it's a community benefit, something that we're providing that we didn't have to provide, such a large substantive open green space, as well as giving the neighbors to the north this spatial separation that they're currently used to, as well as, you know, when people are driving down Dell Road, they're currently used to seeing this open green space and driving past a farm. And that's something I think that's super special and unique and creative. The different entities that we've had discussions with, this is a celebrated, and I think going to be a very well celebrated development by the community members as well. We hear the concerns of traffic, definitely hear those concerns. And we've had many conversations with the neighbors and outside of neighborhood meetings, and you know, addressing these different concerns. And the traffic, you know, is something that really is out of our control, as this road plan was designed by the city, I think as part of their, you know, larger roadmaps. And with the community gardens, you know, we're just trying to do something that's preserving the history of the land that is there today, honoring the Marshall family who've tended to this land for so many years, and again, just providing that benefit. So is it all connected? It is all connected, but there's not like some formula that we came up with how much exact community garden space. If that answers a little bit of your question or addresses a little bit of what you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could we ask the city engineer to chime in on the desire for the city to have a through road all the way through versus terminating Crestwood Terrace on a cul-de-sac at the east end?
Sure, Chair and Commissioners. You know staff's position on infill developments and making road connections. The project you mentioned before, this road that Lafayette would connect into dead-ended into the empty farmland. There's a planned connection in our comprehensive plan, I believe. The street that follows through here follows our city specs standards, 28-foot back-to-back. There would be allowed parking on the road, just like on the north roads, that would honestly mimic the same design as this road. If this were built with all of those developments to the north, again, you know, you've heard this before, but there wouldn't be this conversation. There was a mention earlier of another development that happened where they then extended the road and added another connection. It's always our preference. Like I said, it's one of our city work plan goals is to make roads accessible, things like that. This would be a long cul-de-sac with the units that are on there. It comes down to public safety again, access to police, fire, ambulances, those types of things. So we're going to push for that. It's going to be staff's recommendation to keep that connection in there. I get that there's going to be added traffic in there, just like the other neighbors that drive by everyone's house north of there that go on Jonathan or Geisler, those roads. But we want to provide that connection through there.
Okay. And I'm sorry, could you just dwell on one more point for me? You said the road width on Crestwood Terrace, and did you say parking would or would not be allowed on the side of the road?
Parking would be allowed. We don't have plans to no park this. As you can imagine, there's plenty of parking for the apartment complex. They have all the parking underneath and guest parking. We don't anticipate a ton of parking, so the point of parking on the road for some of this community garden makes sense. They also have the parking lot for that. The villas have 2-car garages and space for 2 cars in their driveway as well. So, of course, people have parties and people park on the road, and that would be completely allowed, just like every other street in this neighborhood.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that clarity.
I have a question on the other development down the street. I'm forgetting the name of it. Jeremy, what was it?
Kinsley?
Kinsley? Did the city council remove the road, the thoroughfare, when it was approved?
They did.
I feel like it did.
So they came up with an option where they maintained the right-of-way that went all the way through. So essentially, the city has an option to continue that through in the future. But the road itself terminates into that development. Not as long as this would be from a cul-de-sac standpoint, but still they lost a connection to a valley road that was planned as well from years before.
Is there anything different about this site where that's not an option or something they could consider?
Besides the length of the cul-de-sac, that would be here with that dead end, but.
Can you add another outlet to Dell where the other garage empties out?
Like from a site distance standpoint, that wouldn't be recommended. There's quite a drop off there. Actually, our city project shows about a 10 to 15 foot retaining wall on that corner.
Okay.
Just because it drops off so far. So connection there would be tough.
And I'm sorry.
No, I'm done, thanks.
My apologies.
Commissioner Farr.
Okay, good. And maybe there were some questions about how that garage circulates underground. There's an entrance exit on the left, the west, and an entrance exit on the right, the east. And so I interpret your plans as it is two-way. People can drive in or out either exit.
Yep,
correct?
you could drive straight through if you wanted to, and somebody could drive across. So it's two-way traffic.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. There may have been an inference by one of our speakers who may have thought that everybody entered on the west and exited on the east. That's not necessarily the case. You have your choice.
Yep. So if you're coming down Dell, you might choose to go in the west and just drive through the parking garage the whole way instead of coming the other end. Like,
Right.
Could happen, maybe not likely, but
Right.
The other part we didn't really talk about is our target market is going to be really empty nesters and a little bit of an older demographic. So they're not going to have as many car trips. They're not going to use their car as much as you'd see a family.
Right.
So when you start comparing single family homes to apartments and the ITE calculations, it gets to be a little bit different. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. And I just wanted to make a comment. Somebody made a query as to the consolidation of projects, I guess. Why aren't we reviewing everything at once? And I certainly fully understand this is a private development project application. That's why it's in front of our planning commission. And the public improvements that go along with the Dell Road design, I don't know where the design of Dell Road improvements are. I'm sure you're going to have to hire a private engineer to design that if you haven't yet already. Start the design process, utilities, retaining walls, grading, and all that good stuff. That's a public improvement project. Usually public improvement projects don't come in front of our planning commission. We review private development applications. So those are separated just by the nature of the process of getting things built. We're here only to look at the private development aspect of what's going on. And it very well could trigger roads, schools, bridges, who knows what, not that it will, but those are public improvements that are tangential, but not our business tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah,
just
Mr. Taylor.
one question I was thinking about, and we talked about this at a previous meeting, and Commissioner Farr, I think you brought this up. In the wintertime when we have so much snow, does the city provide snow plowing, or is that going to be done by the home association snow removal?
So Crestwood will be a public road, so we will maintain that, including snow removal. All the other driveways would be maintained by the homeowners association, including snow removal.
And have you planned out where snow piling would take place within the community?
Yes, on our site plan, we have a few snow storage areas, and if there were excess, we'd haul off-site.
Awesome, okay. Thank you.
Other comments or questions that people would like to explore now, or?
I have one more regarding the airport. I am curious what is allowed and not allowed in the safety zone, as mentioned by someone.
That comment was put in my staff report because ultimately there will be a requirement in the development agreement that they sign a disclosure. The property is located far enough away from the airport that it's primarily affected by noise, not height or not safety issue. So there'll be a notification in the development agreement that the first buyers will have to sign about a disclosure form for the airport noise. But that's something that we review as part of all of our projects, is where it is in relationship to the airport, and is there any height limitations or use limitations. This far away, we're not concerned with the height issue because of the zoning district already limits it.
Okay, thanks.
Jeremy, question for you guys kind of brought up. If the gardens didn't work out in 5 years or something, what process would they have to go through if they wanted to come and try to add homes into that spot?
Well, they would have to replat or subdivide that Outlot A, and that would be the worst case scenario, I would imagine. I don't want to speak for the council, but generally what we try to do is as part of a master development, we want to anticipate the full build out and what's happening 25 years from now. And so I don't envision that being a development option, but the point has been made pretty clearly of wanting more information of how that whole community garden space will work and function and look. And so I would invite the applicant to make sure that that is addressed before it goes to council.
Again, just to talk about process here, as random as some of these discussions seem amongst the Planning Commission, this is exactly what the City Council wants us to do, because they tune into this and they get a better understanding of what the issues are. So I think this is actually a very healthy discussion. And by the way, just for my own personal opinion on this project, I was pleasantly surprised to see the way that we were able, that again, the balance that came into this project. The developer's got to get a certain number of units to be able to pay for the development and do that and make a little bit of money. Marshall, or whoever owns this property, I don't know if it's still a Marshall family. Okay, the Marshall family needs to get a fair value for their family. This may very well be, retirement money or, something like that for people in the family. So they need to get a fair value. We can't just say, well, you can't do anything to that, because they've invested a lifetime in this property and need to get a fair thing. And then the city needs to get a viable, doable project. And this one seemed to work out, in my opinion. I was pleasantly surprised when I did my homework on this project and saw that there were enough housing units to make it a viable project for everybody. The Marshall family's obviously happy, willing to sell it. And I think it works out. And for me, I was very, very focused on making sure the bluffs were protected. And that's happening here. That's a community value for us. So I actually think it's, with some of the tuning that we've talked about here, can be a very positive addition to the city. And isn't it like about the biggest infill piece we have left in Eden Prairie?
I think it might be.
I mean, this is a big deal. And so it's really important to do it right for everybody.
Other comments?
Mr. Chair, I'll take a crack. Just to really change gears, we haven't spoken really about what I think is an exciting architectural opportunity here. I think your architects have done a fantastic job taking the 3-story multifamily structure and veering away from a conventional 3-story multifamily structure. The first time I saw it, I thought it was a 2-story, until someone 5 minutes into it told me that it was 3 levels, and I had to go look for that third level of windows up there. They did a great job of fooling the eye. The gable design adds a lot of character, depth, in and out. It's a fantastic design, something new and different for our city. It offers a different market point, and so I really appreciate the thought that went into it, very much so. I think it's going to be a very successful project. I know those half a dozen or a dozen elevators may be a little expensive, as will be the solar panels on the roof, but I really like all those design touches. And when I looked at the site plan for the first time, I thought the building was just a little bit too long and gangly, but looking at it in 3D with all those renderings that you did, it's broken up very well with the angles. The migration through the street as the project unfolds as you drive down the street, I think will be a very high quality design, very high quality. I was very impressed at your separation of this development from the development to the north, albeit I understand neighbors' concerns about some of the houses do get a little close in that northeast corner. Single family to single family, I'm sure the applicant can maybe throw an olive branch to those few owners where there may be an adjacency issue and talk fences or some spruce trees or something like that to iron out any challenges that may be there for some of the residents. But all in all, to do that separation with land and distance, I think is a generous offer. So I'm excited about the site plan. I'm excited about the Marshall family's legacy to have a community garden as a legacy to their gardens here be offered up to the community. I think you can make more out of that, and I've stressed that to you before, and maybe just challenge you with those 3 things that we've already talked about, is to, again, work with those neighbors on the backyards of 13 to 15, come up with a more defined strategy on those gardens and kind of what happens if this and what happens if that, and make sure that you have a position on the parking. And we talked about maybe street parking, maybe there's enough available parking across at the flats. What do you want? Maybe do a proof of parking plan if you need to. Just make sure that position is fully articulated for council. Otherwise, I think there's an abundance of covered parking, which is good for this market with all those covered parking stalls. The Dell Road improvements that come along with this project has been long overdue. I'm up on Dell Road on the north end, so I don't like making the dangerous trip down the gravel, but it'll be a good improvement for our city in general to disperse trips. Generally speaking, I think it has low traffic counts, all things considered, about the number of acres that we're putting in and the road systems that are in place. Again, public safety is number one, but I know that our city does a great job of making sure the public safety will be available to all the residents, including the children. So I'm very much in support of this project and looking forward to it. Thank you,
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. Other comments?
I would just echo a lot of things Commissioner Farr said. I really like the character, and the open space is exciting. I would just say I saw the early iteration, and I really like the philosophy around the open space. I think it's great. When I saw this, I feel like 12, 13, 14, 15 kind of became a little more about urban sprawl, but I understand you have to fit it in as best you can. I'm not a big fan of the through extending that road. That's part of why I didn't like I voted against the Kinsley project, but if city council considers maybe not putting that road through, I would just support that. But otherwise, I think it is a pretty major project, and I think they've done a nice job overall. So, any other comments, or someone want to make a motion, or?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Kirk.
Move to approve comprehensive plan amendment from low-density residential to medium-density residential on 8.69 acres, from low-density residential to parks and open space on 12.95 acres, plan unit development concept plan review on 32.11 acres. Planned unit development district review with waivers on 7.21 acres. Zoning change from rural to R 1.95 on 7.21 acres. Rural to RM-2.5 on 8.69 acres, and rural to parks and open space on 13.95 acres. Preliminary plat of 32.1 acres into 16 lots, 4 outlots, and the right-of-way and site plan review on 32.11 acres as represented in the November 18th, 2024 staff report, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
That's fun, isn't it?
That's the worst in 15 years.
Motion for Commissioner Cook. Do I have a second?
I'm going to second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Second for Commissioner Farr. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
And do we have anyone who'd like to abstain? Okay.
We didn't have any discussion.
All right. Thank you. Nice job. We're recommending approval of City Council. Moving on this evening, planners report. Jeremy, anything?
Not tonight.
Okay. Do we have any members' reports?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Farr.
If you don't mind, just for a moment, it was within this last week that I subscribed, like many of you may do, to the Eden Prairie Local News, that blog that came out to replace our Eden Prairie newspaper that died a few years ago, you know? Anyway, I suggest everybody read it and recommend that everybody else in the city reads it. Mark Weber wrote a very in-depth historical article about how Eden Prairie accumulated all of our fine open space over the decades, starting in the 1960s. It was educational, inspirational, and a wonderful resource article for not only us as a commission, but I think everybody at large should have been pointed towards that article as well. I encourage you to find it, read it, and enjoy it.
Great idea. Thank you, Commissioner Farr.
Good idea.
Good. All right, any other members' reports? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.